Good morning, business students. So, reading the Times today, I've put the link down the bottom. I've annotated the article for obvious reasons. Superdry look like they're going to delist from the stock market. So, moving from PLC to LTD. Now, lots of past paper questions have assessed moving from limited to PLC. We don't really see many PLCs to LTD for lots of reasons. But actually, this company is struggling. We've talked about this in previous revision videos. And the charismatic founder of Superdry has come along, invested quite a lot of his own money in the company, and he's thinking, actually, I don't want to be a PLC anymore. So it looks like in June/July, they might actually move away from being a PLC. We shall see what happens, but it's very interesting. But I found this graphic here. I've not edited this. It's quite interesting in context with this, but better choices, better future is part of one of their strap lines of one of their advertising campaigns. So I thought that was very much in context with today's article. So before we move on to the article, as always, we should plan our essay questions, and we've got a 10 marker here that I've put together for you. And remember, we're not aiming for perfection, we are aiming for level 4. So we're looking for, is it the easy 10 marker where we have to have balance, chains of argument and everything else, but it's not the assess the benefits or the advantages? Or is it going to be the more difficult one where we've got to write basically a 12 marker without a MOPS? So assess the likely reasons, or clearly this is the start of our however, for Superdry moving from PLC to LTD. Okay, so we're thinking about reasons, which is more than one reason last time I checked, which means it's got to be this one. We're going to do reason 1, however, possible downside to that, in context with an aim and objective of the company. Reason number 2, however, answer the question, justify, everything's in context. Now, we don't have a little sentence before the question telling us the aim of the company, and we don't have anything in the question that tells us the aim of the company either. So when we're talking about reasons, we're going to look at the case study and we need to identify the aims and objectives of the company, and they're crystal clear in the article when you read it. That's what goes at the end of your chain of argument. And there's no point in saying one reason is because and then not linking it to either the current situation or a current objective, especially if it's spelt out really obviously in the case study like this one is. So you've got 2 data extracts here. Now, you could use both of them. And also we've got some quantitative data here as well. So my argument with quantitative data, even in a question that doesn't say using the data, if you see numbers, do a basic calculation. In the example essay that I've not done the calculation for you, but there are some easy wins here if you wanted. So if we're thinking about, we've got loss figures there, but from a high market valuation of 1.7 billion in 2018 to just 7.9 million, you could do a percentage change. Okay, you could just take one number away from the other and say how much the company has devalued over a relatively short period of time. In extract B, we have got share price, so 90p, and down here we know 6p. Okay, so we need to think of highs and lows. Again, we could do percentage difference over a very short period of time, May 2023 to today, by the way, really up to date here for you. Or you could just take one away from the other, percentage, whatever you want to do. You've got some quantitative information there. If we were looking at a 12 marker, I would say it's in the case study for a reason, just do it. I think if the examiner gave you this quantitative information, and especially if it's a 12 marker, they would probably say, using the data in extract A and B, then this question. Okay, if you see that with this, there's at least 2 calculations you could do, so you should be fine. Okay, so remember, we've got assess the likely reasons, so we've got the start of our hook for them moving from this to this linked to an aim and objective. So we need to go in and think about the reasons. So you should pause the video at this point, read the article, think about what you're going to define, think about the 2 reasons and also counter arguments, and go and find some evidence. Pause the video. Did you pause the video? No. So I'm thinking about an aim and objective here. Straight into this paragraph. So we have got Chief Executive and co-founder has indicated decision to go private is intended to reduce high costs associated with being a listed company and, lovely word, to focus more on revitalizing the brand. Okay, so focus more, I'm interpreting that as longer term strategy. I'm thinking in the short term, we've got associated costs here. It's really expensive as a PLC. You need to appoint auditors, for example. You've got to have all of that data publicly available, and it needs to be very, very robust and accurate, normally helped by the extortionate costs of appointing companies like Deloitte or EY or PwC to do your accounts. As a limited company, you still need to declare a certain amount of data in your company accounts, especially if you want some private investors to help you out, but you don't need to appoint really expensive auditors. Okay, some limited companies might, but most probably would do the accounts themselves. So this is a company that is struggling, and if we look at this decline in share price here, that is a telling tale of what's happening at the moment, and briefly halted their share price because people were just dumping their shares. Yeah, and now it's retrading again. This company is very close to a cliff edge at the moment, and maybe Julian can save it with his entrepreneurial flair. Okay, you should write the answer, see how you get on. Again, pause the video. We want, I think a good structure for this would be P, however, reason 1, P, however, reason 2. A, answer the question by quickly, I think the most important reasons are, or something like that, and justify with the alternative here seems the obvious route, because however, if they stayed PLC, something like that. Here is a potential mark scheme. Only potential. I think with this question, you need to demonstrate an understanding of PLC and LTD. Now, if we remember the question actually lists it like that. So in my essays, I would only be writing PLC and LTD. I don't need to write this longhand. It'll take too long, and it's already in the question, so it doesn't matter. But I would be defining both of these. Okay, because I'm going to describe moving from one to another, and I think this is the good foundation of my answer. I'm looking for possible arguments. I'm only looking for 2 reasons, by the way, and I think there's multiple reasons in here, and there's probably more than I've listed. And like it with everything, I'm looking for case study evidence. I'm not going to quote the entire sentence, for example, but as you can see, that's a lot of text. I wanted you to see a quote from the case study, and that structures my argument, by the way. Cost reduction, here's the evidence. However, here's the counter argument. Remember, linked to the other form of business. Okay, so we're thinking about, moving away from one. Here's the benefit, here's the quote. However, what might I be missing out on? You've got to have that comparative analysis between the 2 forms of business. So we've got cost reduction there. We've got focusing on their long-term strategy. These 2 would be my favourites. We've got reduced public scrutiny. Let us just get on with the job, thank you very much. We don't want our public accounts to be in the news every 5 minutes. We want to focus on rebuilding rapport with our customers so they stop going to Next and come back to us. It could be that flexibility. Julian mentions he wants to close some branches, and maybe he doesn't want shareholders to get involved with the discussion. He's still going to have shareholders. He would probably be one of the major shareholders, but there might be other institutional investors. They just don't buy their shares off the stock market. They buy them directly from Julian, for example. And we've got stability. So by getting rid of some of those loss-making stores, or the stores where the rents are just so high, then they can focus on a lot of their online work and have some key flagship locations to build rapport with customers in high footfall areas, for example. So again, here's the question. This is what we are aiming for, not perfection, just level 4. And we're looking for accurate knowledge throughout. This is a given. Remember, this is pretty much the same as that. Okay, so we need to make sure that we are contextualizing everything. There's a tiny bit of difference between this, but not a lot. And you need to think everything is about context, behavior, and stuff like that. Okay, so this, thorough, accurate knowledge and understanding. Okay, so what's the difference between that? It doesn't really matter, to be honest with you. Just make sure that you are describing the theory throughout your answer and you will be fine. Okay, we're looking for throughout and then we'll be fine. Up here, it means that you've not really done a good job in all of your paragraphs, but most of it's all right. So just make sure everything is linked to the theory and is in context. We can get the level 4 marks. Is there a minimum of 3 chains of argument? And as I've said in previous videos, if you write in context, it's actually hard to only write 3. So that should be yes. Is it balanced? Well, if you're using that structure, well, definitely should be. You hopefully are contextualizing everything and not doing abstract waffle from the textbook. If you've done a calculation, good for you, you're better than my answer. And clearly we're talking about Superdry and we're quoting stuff out of the case study. This is the bit that people struggle with generally, is in the conclusion, do they support their judgment or they just repeat the reason they've already written about? Okay? If you do all of that, it's 10 out of 10. If you do most of that, you're in level 4 somewhere, you're getting a minimum of 70%, as the equivalent of an A probably. So, defined, just textbook. Yeah, let's just get a concise definition down of both, and at least I'm going to be answering the question, and it sort of gives me the foundation of my answer that says I'm going to compare and contrast these. We are then talking about long-term strategies. Yeah, point number 1, we've got a nice quote in there. I've highlighted the connectives you can read. I'm not going to read it out to you this time. And we can see that at the end here, to improve long-term financial health, that is an aim that is mentioned in the data extract. We need a counter-argument to that point. So by moving to limited, maybe they can focus some of those strategic decisions on the long-term health and actually not be under the short-term pressure of that share price we saw. But the counter-argument is maybe this is good because it actually drives quicker change in the business. Another reason is cost reduction. You'll see how concise that one is. That's very good. Another reason is cost reduction, full stop. Now let's start our chain of argument. This one's a little bit more waffly, but then again, there's quite a lot there, and there's a chain of argument there. So they point out, use a quote from the case study. Now, I like the term which signifies, which could be interpreted as, which supports the argument of, because that's an interpretation of evidence. Nice language to signpost the examiner to it as well. Okay, reducing these costs frees up capital, essential restructuring resulting in, restructuring's a bit of context but not great, but we've got a quote up here. The leaner operational budget. Get rid of some of those costs that they don't need really because they're losing money. Okay, and directly linked to financial recovery. Even using the word goal, I could put aim in there or objective, but it's signposting directly to that hook. Remember, the hook is not mentioned up here, it's the reasons, so we went to the case study to identify what the aim of the business was. However, a counter argument to this, this frees up capital, this is a source of finance. When we talk about moving from limited to PLC, we talk about that source of finance. Well, if you're not on the stock market, if your business is doing well, maybe you could release more shares, but you can't do that. You can still sell shares, by the way. It's just that they won't be publicly available. Okay? You have to go and negotiate. Overall, let's answer the question. Superdry moving towards becoming an LTD appears to be driven by the need for financial stability to help them survive. Now, if I'd have just said financial stability, I'm repeating a point, but at least I'm answering the question. And this is an interpretation which is not really justified too much. So this does answer the question, but it is not a justification. This is where, oh, hello, that should be a this, by the way, I apologise for that. This decision seems justified. I've used the word justified this time just to force myself to make sure I'm doing it, considering the alternative, which is remaining PLC. Okay, maybe it's an unwanted distraction, and let's link into some of those other things. So I'm not sure if that justification adds much more to the answer. It's actually better than most that I would read, but I'm not sure. I'm thinking if I was marking this, is it level 4? Yes. Maybe the examiner drops it in the middle of level 4, starting at 8 or 9 marks, and maybe they leave it there. I think I'd be happy with 80% on results day. You mark it, you decide, write EBIs and what went wells for mine, compare and contrast it to the one that you should have written, and hopefully that was useful in helping you revise moving from PLC to LTD, which is not something we come across often. You never know, we might